Hi guys, welcome to the Challenge Podcast, the show dedicated to transforming your life. I'm Coach Steve.
And I'm Coach Helen, and we're excited to bring you the best information on exercise, nutrition, mindset and health. Let's get on with the show.
What's up guys, Coach Steve here and welcome to another episode of the Challenge Podcast. Today with me, I've got our special guest, Lan, our nutritionist. Welcome, Lan. So excited to talk to you about life after the challenge. That's going to be the theme of this podcast today. We're going to be talking about nutrition and we're going to be talking about what you can do after the challenge to maintain your results, keep your results, and to avoid that horrid yo-yo diet or that weight gain that a lot of us experience. Lan, I wanted to ask you, when you're training clients, especially talking about contest prep or event prep, like a powerlifting comp, what tends to happen, once someone's finished an extreme diet program, what happens after that diet plan?
So obviously, innately, people have food desires, right? So if we say, I'm going to take away all the things you really enjoy for the next 12 weeks, the first thing that they're going to do when they finish that plan is say, hey, what were all of those things that I wanted to eat and how can I get them into me as quickly as possible?
The chocolates, the soft drinks.
all the indulgences, ice cream, all the good stuff. Yes. So what we have to be mindful of is just because we've worked really hard for one event doesn't mean we want to undo it all immediately after we've done it. We've worked really hard. We've gotten ourselves into a good position. We really need to weigh up the pros and the cons of what we're going to indulge in and whether or not it's going to be a good reward or a bad reward. And I guess this is what I talk to my clients about a lot of the time. It's important that we go out and create that normality in our lives. We don't want to feel like we have to be restricted all the time because then we start to hate what we're doing and we don't enjoy the good foods that we're putting into our body. We start to have a negative relationship. But what I encourage my competitors or just people who've done a good 8 to 12 weeks on a nice low-calorie diet to do is create a social occasion to indulge in. So rather than just sitting at home and indulging in your pizza, pasta, ice cream, and everything else you've been wanting to eat, create a social situation and allow yourself a small reward each week rather than blowing out immediately after the challenge. So I would suggest that you go for that social occasion because then you're doing it for the enjoyment of both the company and the food, and you're less likely to be in a situation where you're just going to overindulge for the sake of it. So when you're choosing to reward yourself with food with friends, you're much less likely to wake up the next morning with this extreme guilt and this association with, well, I've just ruined it all and so on and so forth, because we're having this positive relationship with the food. On the other end, we've got the bad version of this where instead of eating for satiety and eating because we enjoy a food but to a level of comfort, we go to the extreme. So we overindulge and then we have this perceived feeling of happiness whilst we're doing it. But then immediately after, it's followed by this feeling of illness and then the next day, the guilt that kicks in, which then starts this horrible binge purge cycle that I'm sure most of our competitors and most of our challengers have been through at some point in their life. So I guess what we want you guys to take away from this is that rewarding yourself can be a healthy behavior, but the way in which you go about it can dictate whether or not the wonderful results that you've achieved from this challenge stay wonderful results or if they turn around real quick and become slightly less of a fabulous result and we go back to all of these bad eating behaviors.
Yeah. So you're saying, for example, if I won the Max's challenge, I'm allowed to go and celebrate, and you'd recommend to go and celebrate with my friends, my family, and have an event of it?
Of course. I think it's really important that we acknowledge and recognize the effort that we've put in, but we don't want to undo it by acknowledging and recognizing it. So it's about planning, really. All of those foods that you're excited to eat, they're all going to be there. So they're not going to disappear next week. So if you don't get them in on your reward meal, shall we call it this week, you can always have a chocolate bar next week. You can always have ice cream the week after that, so on and so forth. So I guess what often happens after these sorts of challenges is we're so overwhelmed by the choices that we now have because we're no longer on this strict structure and we let our mind get carried away. So plan ahead, have an idea of the things that you would like to eat and spread them out over time so that you can have all of those things, but they don't have to have a detrimental effect.
Yeah. Story time.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, I did a bodybuilding competition and I was pretty lucky to win. And we went out that night and celebrated, right? So I'm there and I've still got my dream tan on, that really oily tan.
You have to love the dream tan.
I'm glittery, right? And I'm like high on life, yeah. And we go to this restaurant and I order not one, but 2 pizzas, right? And I ordered a big jug of beer because I was craving a beer. Dessert after, right? And I tell you, I felt like so sick that night. And the next
Absolutely.
day, I was like, just in a world of hurt. Like I almost regret like eating that much food, even though it was amazing at the time. But just how I guess what I'm getting at with my story was my body just wasn't adapted to these foods. Like
of course it wasn't. No.
You've been eating quote so cleanly, just good quality fruits, vegetables, everything in between. Once I introduced these foods again, I just felt so ill. Are there any risks involved with overindulging, especially after being on a low calorie diet for so long? Are we putting our bodies at risk of rapid weight gain or any sort of reaction such as extreme bloating or something like that?
Absolutely, 100%. So the easy one that you put out there was obviously if we go from a calorie deficit into a large calorie surplus, weight gain is inevitable. There's absolutely no other way around it. If you go from having your body in a caloric deficit for 12 weeks and then all of a sudden we put you into a calorie surplus, the chances are you're going to put on a whole heap of fluid and a whole heap of body fat really nice and quickly. That one's a really simple one to answer. Input versus output is always going to be the balance there. When it comes to the other side of it, though, and we're talking about our general health and well-being, if you have a think about the foods that we have a tendency to indulge in after a comp or after a challenge, they're not overly clean. They tend to be processed and they tend to contain a lot more toxins than what we're putting into our body when we're thinking about our food and eating mindfully. So that can do a number of things to your body. The first is give you a toxic overload, which is what you would have experienced the day after your comp refeed, where you almost feel like you have a hangover. It's a really uncomfortable position to be in. It causes severe fatigue and all sorts of other things come along with it. It's harder and harder to shake the cleaner and cleaner you eat as well. So the cleaner you eat, the more toxicity you'll get out of a situation like that, because your body's not used to processing it anymore. And the ironic thing about the human body is when toxins come into the human body, before they can be eliminated, they get flushed through the system. So it means the body has to experience it essentially twice over. So it experiences it going in and it experiences it as it's being flushed out. So a lot of people who've been on detox diets before and those sorts of things will understand this, because the first 4 days are pure hell and you're eating super clean, but they're pure hell because your body's going through that detoxification phase. The third thing that we want to look out for is if we go from eating clean to eating all of these crazy foods all of a sudden, our gut bacteria gets thrown out of whack really nice and quickly. So we've gone from being in this state of eating all of these clean foods, exercising regularly, having a purpose and making sure that we do everything the way that we're supposed to do it. Supplements on point, nutrition on point, so on and so forth. Then we get to the end of the challenge or the end of the comp in your situation, and all of these things seem a little less important. So we let go of that focus and we start making these sort of negative choices that throw out the gut bacteria, and the bad bacteria in the gut start to outweigh the good bacteria in the gut. Now, this can affect anything from just, having a little bit of diarrhea or constipation to actually affecting our neurotransmitter production and our happy hormones and all of those sorts of things. So the small changes that we think we're making that are temporary can have long-term detrimental side effects. So what we want to do is we do want to reward ourselves, because we don't want this to be, you can never have anything fun in your life again, but we want to do it mindfully. We want to think about what we're putting in our body and what we expect to get out of it. If you go out the night after you finish the challenge and you have a nice burger or a nice steak, and then you get back to clean eating the next day, you're not going to have a single problem. Your body's probably going to thrive off of the increase in calories temporarily, and then you're going to go back into eating clean food. You might have a little bit of fatigue the day following, probably because it's a bit more salt than you've been used to for the last 12 weeks or so. You might wake up a bit dehydrated, but realistically that's going to do no damage to you whatsoever. But if that burger turns into a burger and chips and ice cream, and then hitting up 7-Eleven on the way home and bringing home every chocolate bar you can find, all of a sudden now we're completely out of whack, and we're going to start looking at all of those detrimental effects from that point onwards. It also triggers us to want more of those foods. So human nature is, when we don't have something and we form a new habit, we're okay without it. So the diets where we have no refined sugar, people always find that they have less sugar cravings after the first 4 weeks because they've gotten into a habit. They haven't had that taste, so they don't have the desire for it. Once we start introducing these things again, naturally we're going to start having these appetite responses, excitement towards the food because of the taste, the flavour, the smell. So we need to be mindful that this isn't just about one choice, it's about the behaviours that it can lead to afterwards.
Yes, there's a bit of like a slippery slope, we kind of get that little bit of a taste of chocolate again, or especially because we all have our, trigger foods, right? Like
absolutely.
It's almost anything in puree form. So like hummus or like yogurt or peanut butter, anything in puree form is like my kryptonite. And if I have a little bit, like I'm hooked, and like that's it.
So, you're much better than me. Mine's baklava. All sorts of trouble with baklava.
Yeah. So I think what happens is we love baklava and we have memories of baklava, and that could be linked with, a family event or, our childhood or anything, like a happy moment. So that's the first thing we want to crave or want to eat. And then once we have that first taste of baklava, we get like obsessed with it. We're like, I need to eat it all the time. Right? And then it's
absolutely
that can quickly make its way back into our everyday diet again. And that could, swap out baklava for wine, for chocolate, for packets of chips, ice cream, like whatever this high energy foods that are so addictive to us.
Energy dense and not nutrient dense. And yeah, absolutely. They just take over really, really quickly again.
Yeah. Now, we've spoken a lot about, I guess, some of the risks involved with celebrating after the challenge. Let's say I've finished the Max or the Maxine challenge and, it's maybe a few days afterwards. What or where should I take my dieting or my nutrition or my meal plan? There's lots of talk about reverse dieting and such. What would you recommend for people who have just finished a challenge and, want to maintain their results and, look after their body in a good way? Like, what could we eat? What should we do?
Yeah, so first things first, let's tell everyone what reverse dieting is, because in our industry, it's really commonly thrown around, but the general public don't really know a huge amount about reverse dieting because unfortunately it's not really a mainstream thing, and it's a hugely effective way to make sure that we don't blow out after these sorts of challenges. So essentially the way reverse dieting works is we very slowly increase our calories back up to a maintenance level, or in some cases, if someone wants to put on lean mass or something along those lines, into a surplus, so that we can maintain our lower body fat as we're increasing our metabolic rate. Okay, so essentially what we're trying to do is get our calories up whilst keeping our body fat relatively stable. Now, we will 100% here say if we increase our calories, we are most likely going to increase our body fat a small amount. But if we do it slowly and the smart way, we can keep that as a small amount. If we all of a sudden do what we were talking about before and go back to our old ways and eating this, that, and the next thing that we know isn't good for us, that's energy dense, that's when we're going to see the body fat come on super duper quickly and the lean mass gains probably disappear. So reverse dieting is something that we use with bodybuilders, powerlifters, and all sorts of sports people when they're coming out of competition to make sure that we're getting their nutrient requirement covered, because we do, obviously, the more food that we cut, the more likely we are to create deficits and so on and so forth. So deficiencies in things like B12 and iron, can pop up. As we do these reverse diets, we can balance out any of those issues that might have been created whilst we were dieting down. So it's actually a really cool topic for us to be talking about, because it's not one that is mainstream. And so all of these people finish 12-week challenges, or they finish OptiFast or these sorts of crazy diet trends, and they have nowhere to go. Yeah. We really want the Maxes and Maxines challenges to be able to keep what they've built. They've learnt a huge amount because the program is really about making smart food choices, understanding that variety is key, and knowing portion sizes, which is a massive amount to learn in a 12-week period. And they're huge things to take on throughout the rest of your life. They're things that are going to be beneficial throughout the rest of your life. So I think the other question you were asking, Steve, was about what do we do next, essentially. So there's different ways to reverse diet. You can do it in a really structured way, which is the type that I tend to opt for, which is you give yourself specific caloric increases, and typically I'll rotate through the different macronutrients. So I might increase my protein by 50 calories the first week, then increase my carbs by 50 calories the next week, increase my fats by 50 calories the week after, so on and so forth, and keep rotating through as long as I'm happy with how my body's changing, so on and so forth. You can measure the changes with circumference measurements, or you can measure the changes with scale weight or how your clothes are fitting, whatever suits your lifestyle and whatever suits your goal. But for people who are simply just trying to stay fit after the challenge, that may not have a specific goal that they're chasing after the challenge, they can increase their calories by increasing their serving sizes, small amounts each week, or saying, okay, I'll add a piece of fruit in each week because I know that that's I'll add a piece of fruit in each day because I know that's approximately 50 to 100 calories, and I know that's not a large jump, so on and so forth. So you can go about it all sorts of different ways, but you need to find a way that suits your goals, which I think is another thing that we need to talk about. And you've probably gotten quite good at this, especially after competition. Setting small goals post-challenge is probably the best way I've ever found to keep people on track and stopping them from completely blowing out. What did you do after your bodybuilding comp?
I actually had zero guidance with my nutrition. And once I did my comp, I kind of just had my little fun time of enjoying my body as it was. And then I kind of went back into strength training, and I got back into swimming and running and weird stuff. So I guess I didn't really have a specific goal that I wanted to look a certain way or perform a certain way. So I guess I got caught into the trap, I'll call it a trap, that a lot of maybe challenges or people who tried to lose weight in the past get into, where I didn't really have a goal afterwards. So I just kind of like ate what I wanted to eat and just kind of like did what I wanted to do. And I was actually really surprised how quickly my body kind of reverted back to how it was. And I guess because I wasn't following a structure anymore, and I didn't really have a goal, and I was kind of exercising. And yeah, I kind of just went back to normal really quickly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's exactly what happens in the vast majority of cases. So I'll be the first one to admit I've given out reverse diets to every single one of my competitors over the years, but I think only about 80% of them follow their reverse diets. Yeah. And so we do have cases where we have to fix metabolic damage and things like that because people haven't been able to reverse diet properly. But honestly, I think the best thing that I've come up with my competitors and my clients is to make sure that they have another goal to work towards. Now, it doesn't have to be another body composition goal because you guys have just done 12 weeks of trying to achieve a change in your body composition. But throughout the challenge, you've also learned how to train for strength, which is pretty cool. So if you've just learned how to train for strength, why not set yourself some strength goals to achieve by the end of the year? So we've still got a couple of months to go after this before we hit the crazy holiday season, which I think we're going to touch on in a minute as well. Yeah. But if we can set ourselves some little goals, strength goals, 100-kilo deadlift or an 80-kilo squat or so on and so forth, it gives us something to remain motivated in our training, which gives us a reason to remain motivated for our nutrition. So when our training goes off track, our nutrition's almost guaranteed to follow, because I don't know about you guys, but training is something that I always enjoy. I turn up, I'm excited about it, and I walk out feeling better for having done it. But I don't always feel better because I ate celery for my afternoon tea. So it's a lot. It's a lot easier to stay excited and motivated about your training, and using that to create motivation for your nutrition is a really good way to go about it. Mm-hmm. Photo shoots are also another thing that a lot of my competitors will opt for. You've done all this hard work to do this 12 weeks to achieve this physique that you were excited about. Book yourself a photo shoot in 2 months, and I guarantee you'll be sticking to that reverse diet all the way through. It's essentially a new investment in yourself that you're making to create enough determination and drive to make it worthwhile whilst increasing your calories, sticking to your plan.
Yeah. So as summary with our reverse dieting, you're saying to maybe follow the nutrition plan that we finish the challenge on, and then slowly increase the either portion sizes or slowly introduce foods at the rate of about 50 calories a day.
Depending on the size of the person, I would work anywhere from a very petite person might want to start at 30 calories a day for the first week or two, and then gradually increase on that rotation. But a larger male might be able to go up by 75 to 100 calories a day per week and still have a very easy time of keeping their body fat particularly low. The other option is, of course, always to seek external help as well. You can go and see a dietitian or a nutritionist to help structure this for you. So if you're not confident that you can keep on track post-challenge, book yourself in with a dietitian or a nutritionist, get them to create a plan for you, and they can help facilitate long-term results starting from this great place where you've done this 12-week challenge and achieved so much. It doesn't have to end here.
Now, after the challenge is complete, we understand that many people don't choose to do another challenge, and they go on their way to enjoy the changes that they've had in their body and, train themselves and create their own nutrition plans. Now, after the challenge, I guess some people don't like the structure and, want to follow a little bit more flexible eating and enjoy social events and such. Do you have any tips for people on how to stay on track with their nutritional goals after the challenge? And, you touched on it before about setting yourself goals.
Yeah.
But would you recommend that people, continue to track their calories or track their macros, or would you recommend people use portion sizes, or what suggestions would you make?
So I think it really depends on your lifestyle, and I think you'll agree with me on that one. So different people have different mindsets, and whatever works with your mindset is going to get you the best results. So some people love tracking. Some people love to see those numbers and how those numbers affect the numbers on the scale or the circumference around your waist, so on and so forth, and they're highly motivated by that. For people like that, downloading an app like Easy Diet Diary or MyFitnessPal can be really effective, because you can say, all right, I've come through the Max's and Maxine's challenge. I started at 2,000 calories. I'm now down to 1,800 calories. I need to work my way back up nice and slowly. And you can track it very specifically day by day or even week by week. So you can average out your calories across the week and have 2 days of the week where you have relatively high calories and 5 days where you have relatively low calories, whatever suits your lifestyle. But if you're one of those people that hates that sort of tracking and just won't spend that sort of time, having a plan, so a structured plan, can often be useful for those people. Having the structured plan means less thinking, less time data entering, and less time having to sort of decide on what's the best route for them. So sometimes it's great to have it taken out of your hands, and seeing a professional for that is a really good way to go. Then there's also mindful eating. So eating mindfully means thinking about what your body needs and how you're feeling and so on and so forth, and eating for how you feel. This one's great for people who are fairly in tune with their body. It's not so fantastic for people who have lack of willpower or for people who have a lot of emotional connections to food. But for people who don't have a huge amount of emotional connections to food, mindful eating is a really good practice. There's also a good app called ATE, that I recommend to a lot of my clients to stop them from blowing out, because it's a picture app. So you'll take a photo of the food before you eat it, and then you'll say whether or not it was on path or off path, and then you'll answer a few questions about why you decided to make that food choice. So if it's on path, you might have made the food choice because you knew it was healthy for you. you ate it, lunchtime with your friends in the office, and it'll ask you all of these questions to decipher whether or not your food choices for your health benefits or whether they're from an emotional perspective. And it's worked out really well for quite a number of my clients because mindful eating, it's not innate. It's not something that everyone can do. But with an app like this, you can start to learn why you make the decisions that you make. And I've found it really useful for a lot of my clients. So there's 101 different ways you can go about tracking or being aware of the food that you're eating. That doesn't have to mean that you're eating on plan all the time.
Yeah, I think some people definitely love structure and they love, numbers and counting all the data. I guess that's a very quantitative approach. And I guess some people, have acknowledged that they have lost their willpower. And, I might be one of them and saying, if you put a food in front of me, I'm more than likely going to eat it, even though I'm, this fitness guy. Like I also have these relations with food. And for me, like I need structure in my life and that's okay. Yeah. And I understand that other people are very time poor and they've got other responsibilities like kids and family and work and everything in between. So they might choose to go on a little bit more of this flexible approach. And I often prescribe like a snap diet, which sounds exactly like the app.
Yeah,
you just take a snap of your photo, not for Instagram, but just a second chance to, do I really want to eat this chocolate bar? Do I really want to have this piece of cake or this extra piece of cake?
It's awareness and accountability. It puts it back in your hands.
Yeah. And I think you're right. If you can reconnect with that mindfulness with food and, that qualitative approach, like how do I feel? Am I actually hungry or am I bored? Is this a social setting? And really trying to connect with your body. And I think that you can say the same thing with exercise. Am I fatigued? Have I done enough sets? That kind of stuff. I mean, I think
absolutely.
And I think as you become this more advanced athlete or trainer yourself, you start to feel what your body needs. It's, I'm craving lettuce. I want to eat lettuce. Or I'm craving, oranges. Okay, I need vitamin C, whatever. So like you start to feel those things once again. I think it's a really powerful thing when you could reconnect with your body.
It's that mind-body connection, isn't it? It's fantastic. And anyone can tune into it, but it does take work. It's not easy. And we kind of opt for it as the easy out sometimes. We think eating mindfully is just about choosing the foods that we enjoy, but it's really choosing the foods that our body needs at certain times. And it definitely takes hard work. But for some people, it's a really effective mechanism and it's something that you can 100% do for the rest of your life.
Now, you touched on this one just before where setting yourself maybe a weekly caloric goal instead of a daily caloric goal.
Yeah.
And people have talked about things like borrowing calories. So this idea that, you've got like a wedding on the weekend on Saturday coming up, or it's your birthday or whatever, and you're having like a dinner party and, you might eat less one day to balance out another day. Would you prescribe this technique for people, or like how would it work if I wanted to do something like that?
I would only prescribe that if it's planned. So I don't like the idea of reward punishment behaviors. So I don't like the idea that if you go to a wedding and eat the food at the wedding, you have to punish yourself by restricting your calories for 5 days. I think that just creates negative associations with food. So I'm not a big fan of it doing it that way. But say, for instance, you're a 9-to-5 worker and you've got structure Monday to Friday, but Saturday and Sunday, that you're going to be out and about and doing this, that, and the next thing. Often what I'll do is I'll give people plans Monday to Friday that are very specific and very strict and on the relatively low calorie side. And then on the weekends, I'll give them macros to play with. So I'll say, okay, you have to hit under this caloric limit and you have to hit a minimum of this much protein, but you can fill the rest with whatever you like. And it's really effective for a lot of those people because it gives them the freedom to go out and do what they want on the weekend. And it means that if they're not home to prep their food or they're not home to heat it up, they've got the option of going and getting a healthier option when they're out and about. It works to give them that freedom, but again, for those people, they have to really enjoy that tracking side of things because it means 2 days of the week, they're going to be accountable for tracking their calories. And that is great for some people and not so great for other people. You can do a structured version of this as well, where again, say you've got more structure Monday to Friday and you're less active Monday to Friday because you've got a sedentary job. we might drop your calories Monday to Friday and increase your calories on Saturday and Sunday, so that your overall caloric intake remains the same across the week. If we divide it, say we end up with 2,000 calories a day, but we're giving you a little bit more leeway when we know you're going to be more active and you're going to be more out and about and doing things, because we know that that's going to be more beneficial for you in that circumstance. So it can be super duper effective, but it requires planning, and we don't want it to be a reward punishment idea. If we go into that reward punishment idea, almost always sooner rather than later, people start to hate good food and love bad food, and that's just not the direction we want to take people in. My clients will always tell you guys, I am a big believer that guilt is a pointless emotion. It doesn't change our mind. It doesn't make us eat better. It doesn't make us feel better. It doesn't give us any benefit. It's all about acknowledging and recognizing the decisions you've made and letting them go and moving forward. Because if we're feeling guilty about our food choices, sooner rather than later, we're either going to restrict to try and make up for it, or we're going to say, pardon my terminology, oh, bugger it all. We've screwed it now. I'm just going to eat everything in sight. So we want to be aware of our weaknesses and aware of our strengths, and use a style of dieting that's going to play into those rather than play against them.
Yeah. I think what you kind of just touched on there was like willpower, you know. I think we as humans are just so bad at willpower, and we're talking about that idea of borrowing calories. So discipline to reduce your caloric intake for a couple of days, and then you let yourself go and said, oh, I'm going to this wedding now. I can eat what I want because I've been so good throughout the whole week. We don't have willpower. We're not going to stop at 3,000 calories. When you said go wild. So
it's so true.
Yeah, I think, you know, when the things you're just talking about is really like this advanced approach, if you do have this high level of discipline, which a lot of us don't, and I'm going to be the first one to say I do not. And if I let myself go wild at a party or wherever I am and say, hey, Steve, eat whatever you want, I'm going to eat whatever I want, and I'm not going to be happy the next day. And then that can lead to this very negative whirlwind of things that happen where, you know, the next day I'm like, oh, I feel really guilty, really, really bad. And then I resent what I've done, even though I was happy in the moment. And that leads to a host of conditions which are well above our pay grades, you know. So
absolutely.
But, you know, talking about this idea of events coming up, you know, the big one that comes up at the end of every year is the holiday season. And, you know, we'll say the holiday season, people who celebrate Christmas, people who don't, everyone in between. But I guess generally we find that throughout the holiday season, it's normally a time for families to come together and have big feasts and big events. And it's this common society norm almost that, oh, I get my, you know, holiday season belly and I put on a lot of weight and I got to wear my bigger pants because that's what we do. And my question to you is, do you have any tips for people coming into the holiday season, what we can do to, I guess, still enjoy Christmas time and holiday seasons and family events, but do them in a, we'll say, a healthy way or a clean way or a conscious way?
Absolutely. I think I've used this word a lot today, but plan for it. So you can either plan to succeed or plan to fail, but we want to set you up to plan to succeed. So probably the two things that we screw up most around holiday time is we overeat and we are less active. So we tend to just hang out at home and have less structure in our day. We've got time off work. So instead of getting up and going to work and having our gym sessions planned and we tend to sort of fall off that routine a little bit. So first suggestion is keep active. So still set yourself activity targets during the holiday season, because you've actually most likely got more time to do them than you normally do, even though the irony is that we don't tend to stay as active. So whether that's setting a 12,000 steps a day, or it's saying, all right, I'm going to train 5 times a week whilst I've got my time off work, just make sure that you're staying as active as you possibly can. When you get yourself into a situation where, you know, let's face it, Christmas for most people is just a table full of food. So learning how to stop is probably the most challenging bit for most people. So instead of filling your plate with a little bit of everything, think about the foods that you actually enjoy and put those on your plate first. Honestly, sometimes it's as simple as eating slowly. So take your plate back to your seat, eat nice and slowly, enjoy the food that's on your plate. And then instead of getting straight back up to go for the second round, give yourself some time. Wait 20 minutes. If you wait 20 minutes and you're still excited about the food that's sitting on the table and you want to go off and do it, then go for a second round and just be mindful of the serving sizes that you're putting on your plate. Also, think about it from a perspective of normally when we go through our day, we don't have breakfast, lunch, dinner, 3 rounds of dinner, and then dessert afterwards. So if we know we're going to sit down to this Christmas table and we're going to have dinner and dessert and probably some entrees and some bits and pieces, do be mindful of what you eat before you go in. That doesn't mean don't eat anything and starve yourself, guys. That means just be aware of what you're eating. And if you know that you don't have much willpower, sometimes it is a good idea to eat something small before you go so you're not actually starving when you turn up to the event. So for some people, their biggest fail is hunger. So if they turn up somewhere hungry like the supermarket or a smorgasbord, they're going to go completely nuts. Whereas if they come in and they're slightly satiated already, it's not such a big deal. So I think, planning, like I said, exercise and activity, making sure that you're aware of what you're doing in the lead up to Christmas. So if you know you're going to have Christmas dinner with the family on a Sunday, let's not go out and overindulge on Thursday, Friday and Saturday. Just be mindful of your choices and then go and enjoy the social component. And like I said before, fill your plate with the things you're actually really excited to eat, and then give yourself time before you go up and refill your plate.
I've got another quick little story here.
Go for it.
And I'm going to call out my poor mama.
Oh, no.
So I'm a huge sucker for multiple servings, right? I guess I come from we'll call it a WOG background, and, we just eat. And that's our family, just eat. And at Christmas time, my mum always had these really fancy plates, right? And they were much bigger than the normal plate sizes that we use, right?
Yeah.
And what would happen is, we'll come in and we've got our fancy Christmas plates and we'd load up our food or whatever I'd eat. And then out of almost habit, I would go and get a second plate. And I'd
absolutely
these huge food comas because when you're younger, you don't think about it. You just kind of eat. I had this behavior of, maybe having 2 plates, getting seconds, and it was just normal. Like, oh yeah, Steve's going for seconds. It's normal. And then now the size is bigger.
Yeah.
So I think that's so much. And it was this little observation that I made doing the Christmas rounds. I'll call it Christmas rounds when you go to, everyone's family for dinner every other weekend, that everyone would choose to have the fancy plates at Christmas, or the plates that they would use at their house were bigger than the plates that I use at home. So I found that my normal serving size got slowly bigger as well, was adjusted by the sizes of the plates. And even if I had a smaller plate or a bigger plate, I still felt the same level of, not feeling hungry, satiated, or satisfied for food. So it was an interesting idea to start thinking about even simply the size of your plates, and are you able just to choose a smaller serving plate, fill that plate up, and then eat, and then, like you suggested, take a moment, maybe drink a little bit of water, chat with someone, and then if you still feel hunger, get up and you get a second plate, but you're
exactly
size plate. And I wouldn't call that a quote hack or anything like that. Have you experienced any behavioral tricks or ways to trick your brain to maybe not eat as much, and it might be as simply as just eating a smaller plate? Do you have any
Absolutely. My husband, I'll dob him in for this one. My husband eats really quickly, and so of course he doesn't get satiated as easily. So he gets to the end of his bowl of food and he thinks he's still hungry because his poor gut hasn't had a chance to do anything with it yet. So I started making him eat with a teaspoon because it slowed him down. He had to slow down and have a smaller portion with each bite. And what he started to feel, to his annoyance, was that he would start getting full towards the end of meals instead of having all of this hunger left over. So for him, that was absolutely massive. You touched on the water thing before as well. So water is another little trick that people use to feel full. The one thing I'll point out with water that, again, my clients will all bang on about, but a lot of people don't, is your stomach acid is quite acidic, and it's acidic for a reason. So we don't want to be drinking a whole heap of water before we're going to sit down and eat, because it actually does dilute that stomach acid and it'll slow down your ability to digest in your stomach. So where water is a great idea if you're having it half an hour or so before food, we probably want to be mindful of having it in between meals or 5 to 10 minutes before meals or during meals. Particularly for the crew out there, anyone who suffers from reflux, do me a favor and pull back on the water as a satiation habit. But at all other times, water is a great one to go for. At all other times, water is definitely going to help you tell the difference between whether you're hungry or whether you just have a desire for food. So if you go off and you drink a glass of water and all of a sudden you're not hungry anymore, that's because you weren't hungry in the first place. You were just excited about whatever was sitting on the table and you thought, yeah, this is a good way to get around it. So I think, those are a couple of little tricks that are very useful and that you probably mentioned to the guys before. But the simple old school methods, they work. Otherwise, they wouldn't still be around, would they?
I wanted to just quickly touch on alcohol. And I guess when we think of holiday seasons and think of holidays in general, we normally think about alcohol. And of course, it's easy to tell someone don't drink alcohol, but as soon as you tell someone not to drink it, they're more likely to want to consume alcohol. So talking about alcohol, like how would we suggest someone to, enjoy a glass of wine at Christmas time with your family? And how would you choose to drink responsibly? What recommendation would you give?
So it depends on what you're trying to get out of whatever you're doing. So I'm very much about goal-specific ideals. So if you were one of my powerlifters or bodybuilders, I would tell you just not to do it because it's going to affect your overall outcome. It's going to affect your protein synthesis, your recovery. But if you're just a general person that just wants to have a little drink and be social with your family, the only suggestion I would make is drink slowly. So choose drinks that you're going to sip on rather than ones that you're going to scull down. Put the shots away. They never have any significant benefit and they're not overly social. They're just a way to get drunk really quickly. And we don't need that in our lives. But drink something that you really enjoy. So whether that's a 12-year-old whiskey or a nice bottle of red, it doesn't matter. If it's something that you're going to enjoy and be able to savor, you're going to drink less of it and enjoy it more. Also, be aware of the caloric intake that comes from drinking alcohol. So I'm going to set you guys all a piece of homework to go and Google your favorite drink, pick wine, champagne, whatever you like, and find out how many calories are in a standard drink. It's going to surprise you because when we drink fluids, we don't think calories. We have a separate part of the brain where we think, all right, a Kit Kat or a Tim Tam is super high in calories, so I'm not going to eat that. And then another part of the brain that tells us, oh, glass of wine, that'd be nice. And the two just don't seem to talk to one another. But once you see the reality of the caloric content of alcohol, you start to become more mindful of how you consume it. So I would say to any of my Gen Pop or, people who just want to keep a general healthy lifestyle, that a couple of glasses, up to 2 or 3 glasses of red wine or any standard drink is not going to do you any significant damage if you're doing it once a week or once a fortnight. But if we're letting that become a binge scenario where we're having 6 to 10 drinks in one sitting, obviously we're going to start to have detrimental effects above and beyond a caloric nature. And then we definitely need to recognize and pull it back.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's some really, really great tips there. Lan, let's wrap it up there. We've covered a lot of topics. Now, if someone was listening to this and they wanted to learn more from you or get some help with reverse dieting, where could they reach out to you? How can they reach out?
So you can jump online at www.fullfitment.com.au if you want to book in with me. I'm a little busy at the moment, but if you're happy to wait, I'm happy to take you on. Otherwise, you can jump online at the Dietitians Association of Australia and find yourself a good local dietitian to help you through that. Or if you wanted to message me on social media, you'll find me on Instagram at Superlan, and I'm happy to refer you on if I can't find time to get you in for myself.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being part of the podcast. We'll catch you sometime soon.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks for listening, guys. If you like the show, share it with a friend or leave us a review on iTunes to help us spread the good word.
See you next time.